I will tell you too, I forgot to bring an extension at the bank, and I think it was a 60-day notice.
Really? No.
He's nice to see that.
Where's he going?
He's going to Luther.
Oh, my God.
Never mind.
God.
The second thing, I have more money, is I want you to know that I want to be able to give, first of all, talk about what you want, if any. If not, then I want to know potato chips.
I figured he did, yeah.
As long as you and I are on the same page.
Yeah.
The other one's an extension upstairs for one of the family thing up there. They go
Oh, yeah,
annual
yeah.
because of their budgets.
Yeah, we're fine.
So that's a renewal for 1 year, and then I got a 60-day notice for him. And,
God, that is good, yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't mind.
no.
He hasn't raised the rent.
Yeah,
I just couldn't collect late fees, which is.
yeah, well, plus the fact that we generally deal with the accumulation of old stuff. And
Cross my fingers. I know at least the door frame around has been skinned up.
Mhm.
And he needs to replace all of that tin. If you get a chance, drive out there, that's the only door without balance.
Yeah,
Might be worth putting in.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we got another, officially, I'm showing officially another minute. Yeah, 1:59.
Mr. Bacon, do you have the preliminary app too that I have questions on? Do you have that? Okay, sir.
Is there an extra copy laying there of the documents, or did he just give you one?
What do you need, dear?
Well, I didn't get any of the,
You didn't get any of these?
no,
I'll tell you what.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the special meeting of the CRA, and the meeting is an open meeting. It'll be conducted according to the Open Meetings Act, which a copy of which is on the wall over there. We'll start with roll call.
Stepka,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Patterson, and Bruyette.
Okay, we do have a quorum, but just a quorum. Fortunately, this is just simply a referral meeting today. So with that, let's, first item of business would be to approve the minutes from, tell me when those were again?
August 26, 2020.
Whoa, August of 2020. Yike.
Yeah, I so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Discussion? Are you ready to vote?
Yep.
Roll call?
Stepka?
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
All right, minutes are approved. Next item then would be to review the redevelopment plan and review the cost-benefit analysis for the mall redevelopment project. And Mr. Bacon is here to walk us through that.
Gentlemen, this proposed redevelopment plan is based on the application filed by North Platte Mall LLC, which is an extensive application. It asks for something that this CRA has never done before, and that is that it tax increment financing, and that you designate the mall area as an enhanced employment area. The statutes, the TIF statutes were changed a number of years ago to allow a designation of up to 600 acres in a community where you could impose an occupation tax at the mall in the form of a sales tax and utilize those funds to pay for a bond, and utilize those bond funds to do anything that you could with TIF dollars, but also do some other activities like promotion and furniture and parking and some public spaces. So it's asking for those two bonds to be done. It also, they're West had not done so already, I call it a PUD application so that they can do a mixed use on the site. The plan would essentially rehabilitate the mall. It would be turned into a condo, north half and south half. That delineation has not yet been made. They would have to subdivide the property and then knock down the financial drive-through, I think the tire shop, and perhaps, maybe not, according to the attorney, the old Burger King that's now an Arby's, and put pad sites along the street, and those would be primarily fast food, sit-down restaurants.
By the way, I'm requesting a video of the financial institution being torn down.
Second.
May I continue?
By the way, Burger Chef. I'm young, I'm old enough to have eaten there as a kid.
Burger Chef, all right.
And look at you now. No.
You've come a long way.
Yes, I am.
Mr. Chairman, we should gain control here.
That's right. Since I lost it.
So, they're also going to build a mixed-use building west of the main mall building. And it's gonna have apartments going up and retail and commercial on the first floor. They would intend essentially to start on the south portion of the mall this year, move the existing tenants into the north side on a temporary basis, and then once the mixed-use building is up, try and get those folks to go into the mixed-use building. Then they would rehabilitate the north end of the mall after that's done. I need to emphasize that it is not nailed down in stone what all of those lots off of the main drag are going to be. It could be commercial, it could be mixed, but they believe they're gonna have about 90,000 square feet of just an apartment complex. I believe that's in the southeast most of the funds that they're seeking would be for a couple of things. First of all, they get to be with the change in the statute, they get to be reimbursed for the purchase of the site, which is $7 million plus. And they're going to have significant site rehab because all of these pad sites are gonna have to tear up concrete, parking lot, get infrastructure, get sewer, water, and new access and driving lanes to all those pad sites, and the mall rehabilitation. So they're asking that all the TIF from all of those pad sites and all of the sales tax for a period of 20 years essentially goes to do that site acquisition, infrastructure, and mall rehabilitation itself. So they're not gonna get that all done in the first year, obviously, because it's about 13 lots, maybe 14 with the condo regime. So they're looking at least 5 years, and I still think that's fairly aggressive. So they're going to be doing this in phases.
Mike, when you say the sales tax, are you talking about
An occupation tax.
the occupation tax?
Yes.
So the existing sales tax base and the future sales tax base remains intact to the taxing
Yes.
authorities? Yeah.
The,
Okay.
it does not take away from the
Purpose.
city sales tax. What it does do is add a occupation tax, that is a sales tax essentially, on the transactions on that site going forward.
So basically the state's gonna get their piece of existing plus newly created sales tax. City's gonna get their existing and increased sales tax. And then all of the occupation tax, which is a new tax, being added on to just the tenants within the mall property, would go to the EEA reimbursement.
Well said. So the, this is not not gonna just be a two-legged, redevelopment contract that would come out, and this is gonna be, three pieces. You don't have, as a CRA, the ability to impose an occupation tax. You do have the ability to designate the area as an enhanced employment area. Once you do that designation, then the city can impose an occupation tax. So what would happen is, all three parties, the city, the CRA, and the developer would sign a redevelopment contract, have to be authorized by the city council. The ordinance imposing the sales tax would have to be adopted by the city council. And then the administration collecting the tax and so forth and paying it to the CRA to pay on the bond would have to be dealt with. So this is a much more complex piece.
Mike, again, to that point, obviously, currently, there are no sales tax charged on grocery items. In the event that there were in the future, and in the event that there were a grocer that would locate within the mall, would they be carved out for the occupation tax or not?
The way we have, I've actually drafted a proposed ordinance for city attorney review. Just got that to Mr. Gibbon this morning. And what it does is it exempts, uses the same exemption as the state does currently. So, there are also some prohibited areas that are specifically in the statute. There's some references in there, I've not memorized those, but they can't have an occupation tax on that. So that's the long answer to no, the groceries wouldn't be taxed.
Right, with the occupation tax.
With the occupation tax, right.
And they wouldn't be on any sales tax unless the state changes their rules.
Right. So the other difference is TIF is for 15 years. There's no limit on, no statutory limit on how long the occupation tax is going for. The request from the proposed redevelopers for 20 years, which is fairly standard. Done this in Scotts Bluff, another one or two in Grand Island, working on two others, and that's generally what they do is for 20 years. So this is 1.95%, so it's almost a 2% raise they're requesting. The ask in front of you is to refer this to the planning and zoning commission. If all of the structures are built as they currently propose, you'd add almost 150,000 square feet of coverage to that site, so it would be a significant change. Significant use because you'll have retail and commercial and residential all mixed in. In terms of employment impact and student employment, or student impact, the application has a fairly aggressive set of numbers for how many people they think would be employed, which is 612. 200 of those are, they believe will come from the north end of the mall, which I don't know what they're proposing there. So that's a big bunch. In terms of the student load, I have documentation provided by Gary that indicates there are at least 1,400 empty seats in your school system, so it certainly has the capacity to handle that. It will impact your housing issue, but most of these are frontline workers. If you have 7 sit-down restaurants and or fast food facilities, those folks aren't the kind that are going to be commuting from a long way away, so they're either here or will come here with other folk coming in. Basically, that's it. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I know Rob has some questions.
Well, maybe too, to clarify a little bit so everybody understands, the property we're talking about, when you look at the mall property, it goes Verizon in that northwest corner, and then it goes on back, to, behind, to the east corner of the mall property before you get over to, Baumgart's property. But when you go to the south side and go along that frontage, the old theater building, the original theater building that's bumped up against Wilkinson's motel, that old theater building is still owned by the original mall owner, or they say the original mall, the mall owner that had it before, the last owner, who's out of New York. He still owns that parcel or that building, and then Wilkinson's would own the gas station, or they would own the hotel. Then they own the land where the First National branch is located on the corner, and then as you go east, Kevin Kennedy's building, what building he owned, that is privately held, and then it's on east of there that would hook up to the mall again. So it's that that corner that's not included, and then and then I think it's also important to note that the EEA. Okay, we're talking about imposing a sales tax or basically an occupation tax.
An add-on tax.
An add-on tax to all the sales that would occur within that area. My understanding, most if not all of the current tenants there have signed off in support of the EEA. And you might ask, why would they do that? Well, first of all, it's a little like any other occupation tax that's paid at the hotels. It's paid by the people who come there. They're recognizing the fact that if you can enhance the mall, you'll drive more traffic and they'll get more sales. And this tax is gonna get paid by the people who frequent their business, not the owners themselves, although it could have some impact on sales, but the improvements are gonna far outweigh that. They also are talking about putting probably in the box where Penny's used to be, that box would be used for a convention conference center. And I think part of the EEA funds would be designated to supporting the operations of that conference center. And I think it sounds like they're open to, they would run it themselves, they would let the city run it, or they'd let a third party run it and have those funds to run it. But nonetheless, the plan would be to have a conference center in there, which would be also something that's needed for various community meetings, chamber annual meeting, those kinds of things would be a nice conference center space available. So that's in there as well, with no handcuffs to making the city or anybody else operate it. They'd operate it themselves if they needed to, it's my understanding.
Yes, and if that's done so that there is the money needs to support that, what we would do is, we wouldn't have additional public hearings, but we would probably divide the EEA bond so that the developer keeps a portion and that would be split off. There is one other factor that needs to be understood that I neglected to discuss, is that a large part of this development, they plan on selling these pad sites to third parties for them to develop. So it's not going to be just the developer building all of these projects. They're going to flip it to other builders. The last piece is Exhibit D shows the layout that they propose. This is going to be subject to some change when we see a final subdivision plat. You will also note that there are no public streets in there, and so one of the things when the subdivision plat comes in, watch out for private streets, private access, or city, which means the city would need to pick up the cost, because right now the cost benefit analysis has the city not picking up any cost of this project. So keep your eye on that, and any subdivision agreement that needs to be dealt with ought to address that. There may be minor changes in where those lot lines go as they go through, but that my final piece is this is a huge undertaking, and it'll take some time to get done. So, questions?
So is this occupation tax similar to what we pay to Allo each month?
Would be, I'm
Well,
sorry.
each month when we get our Allo bill, there's a, if you look at your Allo bill, on it, there's an occupation tax, and each consumer pays.
Yeah, you'll get it on every receipt when you buy something, I'm assuming.
So how is that handled? Does the business owner or the business there collects the tax? Where does that go? Does it go to the state like all of our sales tax?
No, it's going to be, the proposed ordinance says that they remit monthly to the city treasurer. So, a lot of fun. And so the proposal has payment of that overhead out of that. Because depending on the number of properties, there could be a dozen or more receipts, and recognition and collection issues and all of those things that would have to be done. So it's not a small undertaking.
So how's that funneled back to the developer?
So it's just like TIF, it's collected, well, TIF goes through the county treasurer and then to the city treasurer, who then writes the check to the bondholder. In this case, treasurer would go from that fund over to the Community Redevelopment Authority, who would then pay it on to the bondholder. So it's all going to be internal at the city.
Mr. Bacon, page 2 of your preliminary application, it talks about phase 2 in there. Redeveloper desires, do you see where I'm at in that sentence? It's about the second and third sentence from the bottom of that paragraph that starts phase 2. Redeveloper desires to treat the development of each lot as a sub-phase of the project with a separate effective date in order to maximize the 2250, the tip.
So that
Also in the document, you say 2024, we're done, correct? I mean, all of the project from all the stages in this TIF will be from 21 to 24. And at the 24 will be the beginning, or the beginning of the end of the last phase.
So the application document was prepared by the Redevelopers Council. So this application wasn't done by me, this was done by those guys. So in conversation with the attorney for the developer, we had a discussion on how long is this gonna take? Because they talk about, when they did the layout, they said 4 years. And I said, you need to realistically see where we're gonna be. So the plan talks about trying to get it done, but the plan is not set in stone in terms of how many years it's gonna take to get this project done. That will be put in the redevelopment contract and is gonna be a negotiated item between you and the developer. So, realistically, they're planning on starting in May if they get city council approval. We're not gonna be done with this process in May because if the city council approves it, then they have to go through the reading of the ordinance that imposes a sales tax and previous and that sort of thing. So it's not gonna be done. So they're gonna go right into the south part of the mall. They wanna do a whole lot of other stuff, but I think they're gonna burn a lot of 2021 getting the spring wound. So, they may need to go out more than the 5 years realistically. The fallback would be if they don't, you can go ahead and pull the trigger on the division of taxes on the unbuilt lots and let that run. So
Well, that's kind of my sense. I mean, we're in 21 now, and it would seem to me that 26 would probably be more appropriate for the outside, but then 26 comes around and they haven't started. I we'd start the clock and the 15 years would start running in
Anyway, that's
26.
negotiated out. You have to remember, you're doing $75 million worth of development in that short a period of time in retail. It's a push, yeah.
Well, and of course, the big part of it would be the other lots that other builders are gonna be
Yeah.
involved with. And so that, it's gonna expedite them needing to get those sold, get something going.
Mr. Bacon, on that redevelopment site, you have, I think it's number 7, lot 7. When you have improved sale, that lot 7 is a smaller lot than some of the others, but they have an improved value of 3.5 million. What's the MU?
They don't have an end use described,
Do you see where forgive me,
Yep,
sir,
yep,
I'm on
yep,
page
yep.
5.
Yep. Of the application or the plan?
Of the application. I'm lying to you, it's on the preliminary app. Because most of the facts from there go to the final. But I was just curious what that building was.
I do not have any information on that.
Because you have a $12 million MU later on. I just was curious
Yeah.
what that was.
It's not been disclosed, and in discussion with the attorney, it's really up to the developer, so I don't know what they've got in their mind. That wasn't part of the application.
I thought it might be worth mentioning, as you read this, the public may misunderstand, and Mike alluded to it earlier. On that page, on your application, on page 11, where we talk about the way this reads, a public conference center for the city. I don't think that the mayor is going to pay any rent. The city, it's
I
not
think
North
that's-
Platte,
I think it's really more for the
community
use
rather than,
but
That's
it's
the
not,
application, excuse me, in the way I handled it in the plans, it's not the city. So,
I
think
just
we
thought,
clarified- We clarified that, and I think we're on the same page with Matt and the city, that this is not, we don't want to infer to anyone that the city is going to have anything to do with that conference center.
first time I read that, I thought city.
Yeah.
You know, so you could pick that up.
And I think Matt was very quick to point that out, that, hey,
And
wait a
again,
minute, what are you doing?
this document, the application was submitted by someone out of Lincoln, not me.
Right.
The language in the application has been revised.
Yeah, so we changed the plan, so that.
Also on page 9 of your application, 22, paragraph 22, 9. On page 9, paragraph 22, additionally, the applicant is submitting an application for financial assistance from the North Platte Quality Growth Fund. This request is addressed in a separate app. I don't see, that was not attached.
Well, that wouldn't be any of our purview.
It wouldn't come to us. Well, what happens as part of the redevelopment contract is they have to disclose those other benefits that they're getting from the city from sales tax, so that you can take that into consideration in negotiations for the redevelopment. So they will have to tell us at that time.
It's equated in, isn't it, into those? When what you were just referring to?
Well, I don't think one confirms the other. In other words, they're making application for TIF and EEA designation through us. Well, they go to the Quality Growth Fund, and Quality Growth Fund tells them go pound sand, and that's money they're gonna have to get themselves.
Oh, and the reason I said that,
What you have to do is tell you if they've applied for it and if they haven't, and you get to take that into account in doing what you want to under the redevelopment contract.
oh, and the reason I said it, I thought it read that it was attached, the way I read it. That's,
When
there's on,
this was sent, it came in the same email, but it doesn't go to the CRA or.
okay.
Yeah, I think just one letter, we'd like some type of thing, yeah.
I didn't notice that part.
Yeah, that's why it said it was
Yeah.
attached, that's why I wanted to clear it up. Let's see, page 11, page 12. On page 12, A, right up there, second paragraph on page 12, the proposed occupation tax will be 1.9%.
195.
Yeah, on the eligible businesses in the EEA for a 20-year period.
Yes, sir.
That is subject to change, is it not? It's not going to be 20 years. If that 1.9 collects the bond that pays the bond, I see my financial girl shaking her head. It doesn't mean it's going to go 20 years.
No, it means it won't go past 20 years.
It will not go by the number that they enclose here, that they're asking for EEA. If that's funded, and I don't think it would be, but hypothetically, if that's funded in 15 years, those funds, does that stop?
Just like TIF would.
You pay off the bond, and that's the way the ordinance is drafted currently.
Okay, it doesn't.
The easy way to say it is there's a sunset, whether it's paid or not.
Which brings me, the 600 acres, does that have to be contiguous, or is it possible that North Platte could do another, this is it, this is the only place in North Platte because of that, is that, use that possibility of the EEA? We can earmark 600, because of the small project, Mr. Bacon, it takes that part out, that's EEA. What if there is
You can do
another
one
plant?
As long as the total acreage doesn't exceed 600.
That's,
There-
it's the
there-
same thing as the TIF formula on so
Just
many
like
acres?
The blight and substandard.
No, it doesn't have to be in blighted and substandard.
No, I'm just saying it works like blight and substandard. A piece here, a piece there,
Right.
no more than 600, and blight can't be more than 35%.
So you have the ability to declare any area in your area, which is the blighted substandard area, as an EEA area, not to exceed 600 acres. If there are other areas not in blighted substandard, if someone wants to do an EEA project and there is acreage left, the city has the ability to designate that, and there's a slightly different procedure, but they can do an EEA bond for a non-blighted area also. But essentially, you get 600 acres that can be placed around the city.
And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Grand Island, I think at least one of the EEAs in Grand Island, they actually went out and approved an EEA that not only took into consideration the developing site, but it actually went on the perimeter and pulled in retailers on the perimeter, which is kind of amazing to me.
Yeah.
But they did that. That's not what's happening here. That this EEA is proposed to be only within the boundaries of this project, and they're getting buy-in from their tenants that they want this. I think that's important along the way here. It doesn't always work that way, but I guess I'd have a hard time. I realize that what they justified in Grand Island was you're gonna benefit other retailers from this new development, so you ought to help pay the toll. But it's a little harder to swallow.
Yeah, there are a number of lease contracts that don't allow landlords to go through that process. Other questions? These are good questions.
I think some of it educational, I may not. I was just curious on the site plan. You have east of Lot 7 and kind of south and east of Lot 8. What are those X's for? Do you see what I'm talking about, Mr. Bacon?
Again, this was provided by the developer, and I'm assuming that means don't build here, that's for
But it's not part of the other, it is not contiguous. Those are not added to lots 6, 7, 8, or 10, or 9, or 10, and they're not added to that. So is that, I don't see that lot number or whether, just curious.
I don't have an answer for you on that. What will have to, when we see the subdivision plat, more will be revealed, and we'll see if that's attached. I suspect what we're going to have is public parking and easements, cross easements for those areas. And more than likely will be additional lots, but those aren't currently designated for a pad site.
Well, without
I do know that if you go just south of lot 7, which would be the old theater building, where that is a separate owner, there is some easement for parking, and of course there has to be access.
I did find that. It's on the title commitment in your, it's attached to one of your applications. I was gonna ask you, I sense that is, because right now you have that designed, there's no parking, no access to that lot.
And that lot, there was a lot of discussion about that, and when the deed's transferred, and that needs to have access and has to have some ability for some parking, so I'm not quite sure on lot 7. I'm guessing lot 7, because it goes, the lot line goes really almost up to that other existing building.
Well,
But I think there's an easement there.
I think Exhibit B on your preliminary thing, that's, I assume, Mr. Bacon, so you're familiar with title commitments and those exceptions. If you go to Exhibit B on your application, number 26 says declaration easement North Platte between North Platte Associates recorded. One of my questions is, you look at that, that's an illegal lot. You can't, there's no access to that lot. And by virtue of your planned unit development, you can't landlock that without something. I wondered, because that easement was filed in October 20, maybe that addresses that. I'm just guessing.
It did. And there were a lot of attorneys involved in that.
We're gonna,
I'll bet that was fun to get done.
It was fun.
It's going to be interesting when we see the final subdivision on this, because that's gonna answer a lot of questions. Those X parts don't really have anything to do with the development per se, and so you're honing in on
A little more granular than we.
Problems that are gonna get solved at the city level, not the CRA level, but those are, it's going to be reasonably complex, so.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Bacon on the plan and cost-benefit analysis? Do you have any thoughts on them?
Final thoughts. I wish I had a better explanation for you as to what's going to go into each of those structures. I do not. This is a significant investment and pretty cool project to get this thing pulled off.
I think it's probably important to point out that the previous owner had been riding this horse for a long time and never fed the horse, never gave the horse water, just kept riding the horse. And I think the intention was to continue to ride the horse until it fell down and then shoot it, okay? Which wasn't really in our best interest. The current owners have two options. They could get right back on that tired horse and keep riding it and finish the plan that the original owner had, or they can do this project. And I think those are the choices. This thing cash flows, given the existing tenants and the revenues that are there. And so the big question is, do we want this project to happen? And these are developers that did something similar in Columbus and are building elsewhere, experienced to what they're doing, have the capital behind them. This is kind of a rare opportunity, and it wasn't easy, let's say, to get this to the point where it's in the hands of someone who will actually do something with it. So And I think we have at least one person in the audience who can fully appreciate that process.
Okay,
All right,
thank you. Well, the
We'll move on
request is to not to approve the plan,
recommend the plan.
just not to recommend the plan.
Actually,
just
the rec-
transferring it to the planning commission.
Passing the resolution, recommending it to the city, planning commission.
So you have two choices. If you do not pass the resolution, the project dies. If you pass the resolution, the project goes forward, but it's not yet approved. You do not have final authority to approve it. That's in the hands of the city council.
With that, I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 2021-1, which is the resolution before you.
This was not an open forum, we don't have to take any public comment.
No. Just a public meeting.
Okay. I would so move, I think I gave her mine
You're
for that,
moving 2021-1.
2021-1. I guess that's, and it's only April, we're gonna have more, huh?
That's right, there'll be a few more.
I move 2021
All right,
at 1.
moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion to refer the resolution to the planning commission. Are you ready to vote?
Stefka,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Motion carries. And I believe there's no other business other than that we will probably be seeing another application, probably for premium beef at some point. And then this will start working, boomeranging back to us, so if we can kind of keep our calendars relatively open, we'll get calendars out in terms of timing of all this, so that we can get all this processed. So, unless there's something else, we're adjourned. Thank you.
There's a
Hey,
couple.
Dawn, I have a
Mike,
question about,
I get a little more
We have
time
a-
on these, a little more notice.
Well, this deal was an absolute shit show because of the developer, because Mike's been waiting, and their legal counsel is Bear Home,
Now,
or not Bear Home, it's the other, it's the same law firm we use in Lincoln, Klein Williams. And so we're waiting for the developer to get their information, so Mike was pushing on Klein Williams.